Hey, Dodgers fans, Shohei Ohtani fans, you all probably saw the news that his interpreter, Ipe Muzahara, was sentenced to nearly 5 years in federal prison. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to explain what the charges were exactly, how it all went down, and what happens next. Well, technically, he was charged with bank fraud, which means he knowingly defrauded a financial institution. That's one way, which means there was some sort of criminal intent. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't negligence. He intended to do it. Or that he fraudulently obtained funds that were under the control of a financial institution. So I think in this case, both are true. And by the way, Cornell Law School has a great database of statutes, laws, information for anybody who's ever curious. It's all really interesting, right? Because the clear victim of this was Shohei Ohtani. And yet the prosecutor said this was bank fraud committed against the banks. That's because the states could have prosecuted for simple theft. That's under their purview. But federal prosecutors have other crimes and charges they bring, like wire fraud or embezzlement or bank fraud. There was also a tax fraud charge here. And they have to show that all of this happened across state lines. Often they're able to do that with wire fraud. So somebody commits a crime, they commit fraud, they lie about something, and they do it over the internet or over a phone, and that's under federal purview because it's considered wire fraud, right? So they cheat somebody, but the feds can prosecute because it was done across phone lines, internet, etc. If the case had gone to trial, it might have been a little different. They may have slapped on more charges. They may have had Ohtani come and testify. But in this case, there was a plea bargain. They made a deal. So the defendant could have gotten up to 30 years in prison, but it landed at more like 5 or 6. The defense attorneys were arguing for more like a couple years. But basically, they were able to get smoking gun evidence, and the defendant admitted it basically and entered a plea deal. So they got the evidence from the Signal app. Normally, it might be a little tricky for them to get that evidence, right? Because it's encrypted. They can use forensics to see a message was sent from whom and to whom and when and things like that, but they might not always get the content of the message. In this case, they got permission from the defendant to go into his phone and got the password from the defendant, and they were able to find that text that says, technically, I did it, right? So that's all she wrote. In terms of what's going to happen next, so he'll do his time. He may get a little time shaved off for good behavior, not much. He'll get deported back to Japan. Technically, he owes restitution of like $17 million to Ohtani. He's probably not going to be able to pay that. The way it works is if you can afford to pay it and you don't, you might go back to prison, but not if you can't. That's all she wrote. One other little tidbit, look at the prosecutor's Facebook page. You think he was happy to get this case?